Whispers of a Nation Divided. On a warm April night in 1861, a single cannon roared across Charleston Harbor, and with its echo, a nation split in two. But behind that first shot lay secrets.
The cracks in the Union. Decades before the first shell hit Fort Sumter, the warning signs pulsed beneath the surface. The United States, barely 80 years old, was already living two different lives. In the North, factories hummed, cities swelled, and railroads carved steel veins across the land. In the South, cotton ruled everything: fields, fortunes, and futures. But both sides shared one shadow, one that grew heavier with every passing year: slavery. It wasn't just a moral question, it was a question of money, power, and survival. And each compromise, each political bandage, only covered a wound that kept deepening. A nation at the edge. By 1860, the air felt charged, like before a lightning strike. Then came the election of Abraham Lincoln. To the North, he was a promise. To the South, he was a threat. Whispers of secession turned into declarations. South Carolina broke away first. Others followed like a chain reaction, one state after another, forming a new nation, the Confederate States of America. Lincoln hadn't even taken his oath, yet the Union was already tearing apart. In Washington, panic seeped through the halls of power. Nobody knew how far the unraveling would go. The first shot. Fort Sumter, April 12, 1861. Before dawn, Confederate guns aimed at the Union-held fort. A signal shell arced through the sky. Seconds later, the harbor erupted in thunder, a cannonade that echoed across the nation. The Civil War had begun. For 34 hours, the fort endured the storm. Smoke blackened the sky, walls shook, men prayed. No one died during the bombardment, yet its impact was fatal. It killed any hope of a peaceful resolution. Blood in the fields. War swept across the continent like a fever. Bull Run, Shiloh, Antietam. Names that lived quiet lives on maps until they became graveyards. At Antietam, the sun rose over cornfields soaked in blood. In just one day, more than 20,000 men fell. The bloodiest day in American history. Families waited for letters that would never come. Cities filled with the wounded, carried on wagons, on doors, in arms. The war was only beginning, but its cost was already unbearable. Shadows of hope. Amid the chaos, something began to shift. The Emancipation Proclamation, a document that rattled the world. With a stroke of Lincoln's pen, the war gained new purpose. The fight was no longer just for unity, but for freedom. Former slaves fled to Union lines. Some joined the fight themselves. Soldiers in blue uniforms, carrying the weight of centuries on their shoulders. The war's moral compass had changed, and the South felt the ground move beneath it. A turning tide. July 1863. Gettysburg. 3 days that would decide the fate of the continent. On the third day, General Lee ordered a desperate assault. Pickett's charge. Thousands marched across an open field under a sky full of artillery fire. When the smoke cleared, the Confederate lines were shattered. It was the moment the war's momentum shifted. The Confederacy's hopes dimmed, though it refused to surrender. But the price. The price was written in the silence of the battlefield. The final push. As the years dragged on, General Ulysses S. Grant led the Union with relentless determination. He pressed the Confederates on all sides, squeezing their territory, tightening his grip. Sherman's march carved a path of destruction through the South. Railroads bent into twisted Sherman's neckties. Plantations burned, and cities trembled under the weight of advancing Union troops. The message was clear. The war was ending, and the Confederacy was running out of time. The last breath of the Confederacy. April 1865. Richmond fell, the Confederate capital. Homes burned. Government papers fluttered in the smoke-filled air. President Jefferson Davis fled in desperation. 1 week later, Grant met Lee at Appomattox Courthouse. Two exhausted leaders, two armies drained of strength and spirit. Lee surrendered. A pen signed what 4 years of fury could not break: peace. The war was over. But victory carried a bitter shadow. Only days after the surrender, Abraham Lincoln walked into Ford's Theater. A gunshot cracked through the laughter of the audience. Lincoln fell, victim of an assassin who refused to accept the new America. The nation that had survived war now grieved the man who helped end it. Rebuilding the ruins. Cities were ash, fields were barren, families were torn apart. 4 million formerly enslaved people stepped into uncertain freedom. Reconstruction began, a struggle of laws, rights, resistance, and hope. The wounds were deep, some still are. But the country did not collapse. It rebuilt, slowly, painfully, together. The Civil War ended more than 150 years ago, yet its whispers still linger, in monuments, in stories, in the very fabric of the nation. It was a war fought not just on battlefields, but in hearts and beliefs. A war that decided the meaning of freedom. A war that nearly ended the United States, but ultimately redefined it. From the first shot at Fort Sumter to the final surrender at Appomattox, the Civil War remains a reminder of how fragile unity can be and how fiercely it must be defended.